Hello, this is update for October 1, 2022, day 220 of the war and of the date update. So today I'm just going to go straight into walk through the battlefield. The main focus obviously is this North Lugansk section of the front line and specifically area around Lyman. That's where the main action is right now. But we're gonna first let's just quickly start from the north and do kind of our traditional walkthrough in a clockwise fashion. So situation along the state border is more or less stable without much of activity on both sides. Now let's actually jump into situation around Lyman. Well, actually North Lugansk section of the front. So what is happening here is essentially Russian troops, based on some unconfirmed reports, Russian troops here now also withdrawing towards the line that's going to go around this village. Kuzemivka is kind of like a main point here, and it's probably going to go up north. So essentially, they're leaving this small portion of the Kharkiv region that Russian troops still controlled. They essentially evacuating this whole area. So that, and actually, let's just move. Just a second. Let's just quickly move, and this is probably going to be a better map. Let me show you what's going to happen. So essentially, the key points right now for the Russian troops is strongholds is Kreminna. So they retreated from Lyman straight to Kreminna. So apparently the new front line is going to be sort of built along this road that leads to Saratova here, and then as I said, that village a little bit northwest of Saratova, and essentially probably will go basically to the state border, something like that. At least this is what is Russian command is attempting at this point, because as I said, there are reports that Russian troops are withdrawing from this kind of area, as you can see now. We'll see where it's gonna sort of lead, but let's actually kind of a little bit jumping back and forth. Now let's actually look let's go back and see what's happening here, what happened actually in Lyman. So essentially what happened there is Russian troops managed to escape. The escape started at the end of the day on the 30th. So apparently the evening on the 30th and night on the 1st, they were basically retreating. First, obviously, they moved to Lyman and then to Zarichne, Torske, and then they traveled this road to Kreminna, even though a road, under some fire control apparently wasn't sort of good. It wasn't strong enough, so they managed to escape. This is obviously correct move from the Russian command. There is no question. It's better to lose a battle, but be able to continue the war and see another battle. So another battle will be forming around this Kreminna. It will take some time for Ukrainian troops to really catch up, move closer, and then so on before the active fighting will start here around Kreminna area, essentially. But the point is, Russian troops managed to escape. Yes, they lost some equipment, even though they didn't have that much equipment there left. Some soldiers, but still the backbone is still there. And as long as you have backbone, you can kind of refill it with sort of new meat, and largely unit is going to be able to continue fight. This is obviously puts strong psychological pressure on Russian troops. This is just another loss. So there's definitely no question. It's extremely negative psychologically. It's obviously very positive psychologically for Ukrainian side. So that's just in a nutshell what's happening here. So as I show here, right now, probably temporary Russian position around this village Nevsky. Most likely they will slowly retreat to this, as I said, to this road that starts it doesn't start really in Kreminna, but the road that goes from Kreminna to Svatov, essentially. That's just going to be their fallback position because the most southern sort of section is already there. So they will probably try to prepare defensive position and then slowly kind of will be retreating to this road, essentially. And then Ukrainian troops are going to be slowly kind of catching up to new Russian defensive positions because they still, as you can see, kind of far away from those positions, basically, at this point. Now let's actually kind of look just another map. So what happened on the morning of the 30th, if you remember, so there was attack of this 503rd Regiment. So that attack was not really, and probably in hindsight it was very clear, it was attack to just sort of distract attention of Ukrainian troops and basically create the bridge essentially for exit of these troops, even though Russian propaganda was presenting it, oh, this is, large attack that will change everything and everything is going to be, Lyman will be controlled and Ukrainian troops will be beaten down and all that stuff. So, but the real purpose of that attack was just really create a bridge to allow these units out of Lyman and essentially this 201st military camp to exit and to basically get to new defensive line here, as I show here. So that was the whole purpose of that attack. And as we can see right now, it succeeded essentially because it allowed Russian troops to exit Lyman and to exit this Zarichne Torske area with losses, obviously. There's no question about it, but as I said, the skeleton is still there, and that's the most important part of all of that. So this is just kind of like how the exit was. So obviously they first exited Lyman, moved to Zarichne Torske, and then from there they essentially moved to Kreminna. So that's just, and then also Ukrainian troops managed to gain control of this village Terny in the process. But as I explained, this is sort of now part of larger Russian withdrawal towards east. So there was not much sort of fighting essentially there. And there was actually not much of the fighting in Lyman itself once, on the 30th essentially. It was relatively, let's put this quiet. Now let's just kind of like look at how the situation was developing over this past 7-8 days. So on the 23rd, there was first decisive move by Ukrainian command here in this corner between Oskil and Siversky Donetsk river, as you can see. Next decisive move advance was next day, as you can see. So that what really created the foundation for what's happening right now. Then Ukrainian troops were expanding this bridgehead here, and then on 27th they essentially create this almost pocket around Lyman, right? And then this is what's the outcome on essentially October 1st, right? So this is not quite new. Frontline, this is also temporary situation, as I said. So because based on some information, and it's all unconfirmed information, I want to make it clear that Russian troops basically withdrawing here to kind of build new defensive position along this Luhansk-Kharkiv region border, as you can see. So essentially, which sort of makes sense because eventually the position is going to go, so essentially along this road, Kreminna, Svatov, and Svatov is going to be one of another big stronghold there, and it's just going to go up to the state border essentially. So this is where it's going to be sort of going probably over next 5 maybe week. I don't know. It's very unpredictable. So also we need to consider that Russian units with mobilized conscripts are going to be showing up in relatively large numbers soon on the front line. How that will affect everything remains to be seen. So that's still one big unknown question that sort of remains out there. So what does this create in terms of opportunities? Because from a Russian perspective, it's very clear, right? They just want to delay advances of Ukrainian troops and maintain control of as many territory as possible. That's fairly straightforward, right? And the idea on the Russian side, okay, let's just kind of slowly give up what we absolutely have to, in the hope that there is this buildup of this reserve army that will come and will sort of crush Ukrainian troops essentially. So that's just kind of big picture perspective from the Russian side. From Ukrainian side, obviously the situation is reverse. Is okay. We would like to achieve as much as possible before this reserve army shows up, right? And then, regardless if it shows up, we'll continue fighting because we have no choice, right? This is kind of like situation of desperation. Whether that army shows up or not, it really doesn't change Ukrainian position overall. So obviously, acting quickly is in Ukrainian interest, and making quick advances is definitely that's what the Ukrainian side should be doing. But here at this point, what this opens up is Kreminna obviously not a stronghold, but this opens up opportunity to go basically towards southeast, essentially go behind Rubizhne and Donetsk, and essentially creates ability to liberate those towns, and essentially then maybe cross even Siversky Donetsk River and get into the rear of this whole Russian troops, including those Wagner mercenaries that attacking in Bakhmut and in Soledar essentially. So basically create a situation for the Russian side where all of this area will be pretty much quickly evacuated and lost because there is threat of attack in the rear. So this is one. Then more sort of straightforward is attack towards Starobilsk, attempting to kind of liberate Svatove from sort of south. But this sort of territory is relatively less important, obviously, relative to what I was explaining, that attacking towards in direction of Severodonetsk, and then sort of more towards south is where the Ukrainian focus is probably going to be more. So because this is just, as I said before, economically, this is just essentially agricultural land. Right now, there's, it's important, obviously, but from a perspective of like even, how to say, like propaganda purposes, retaking that lost ground will do more than most people never heard of Svatove, Starobilsk, Belovodsk. It's just some kind of names that don't ring the bell. And then also situation, even let's say not even, but once Ukrainian troops will liberate this area, you're always going to be exposed from the flanking strikes from the Russian territories that literally can go basically just simply south and cut you here in this territory. That's actually partially why Ukrainian troops evacuated this whole area at the beginning of the war so quickly, because if Russian troops started advancing, from all of this area and here, this essentially creates opportunity to be encircled here. So in other words, even once Ukrainian troops are going to control this territory, it's going to be hard to control it. Let's put it this way, because you can always have a strong hit, by Russian troops that goes down south. So that's what this opens up for Ukrainian side. Let's put it this way. Now let's move south. Let's see what's going on the North Donbass front line. Things here are more or less the same. No essential differences. Relatively smaller attacks from Russian side. Typical areas: Soledar, Bakhmut. No, essentially no changes here. also this area, all of this kind of like south of Bakhmut area, except as I said, there were like a lot fewer attacks. Only two villages were, two strongholds were attacked. So potentially hard to make any conclusion whether this means something or not, because there was time when this was actually for a day or two was essentially quiet, this whole section of the front line in September, when Russian front line was collapsing in Kharkiv region. But we'll see. It doesn't really mean anything right now. What's going on here from a big perspective. Now let's move to central Donbass section of the front line. Things here are more or less the same. Russian troops trying to advance from this Piski salient for some attacks against this New York for very unclear reasons. Otherwise, it's pretty much quiet on this whole front line here. Now let's quickly check Zaporizhya front line, which is forever quiet, let's put this way. October 1st was not a difference. So the same more or less situation here is pretty stable and unchanging. Let's quickly look at Kherson bridgehead. Here things are getting somewhat active. Russian sources reporting that Ukrainian troops are actively continuing the attacks with the idea of liberating the bridge here, which unclear. The big picture of this attack is unclear. And then also Ukrainian troops started renewing pressure from the north here in the northern section of this whole Russian huge bridgehead on the western bank of Dnipro River. So again, looks like Ukrainian command decided to force situation again. Remains to be seen if Russian side is sort of ripe for defeat, or there is still enough ammunition, enough everything to continue defensive fight here. But it's very clear it's just defensive fight here that eventually will lead to loss of the Russian troops of this bridgehead, because the attacks are pretty by HIMARS rocket systems are pretty intense, and as long as Ukraine gets rockets, there's no future for the Russian troops here. So again, this is just gonna maybe take another month or whatever, but the writing is on the wall for the Russian troops here, that's for sure. Thanks for watching, and till tomorrow. Bye bye.